I just want to thank everyone that's on right now. I know there's only 4 of us. I'm Erin Kokinda from Wakefield. We're going to get started at 7. So this meeting is being recorded, but I will be back in a couple minutes.
Recording in progress.
Hi, everyone. It's Erin Kokinda from the town of Wakefield. I know we have David here from MAPC. We're just waiting for a few more people and we'll get started in a few minutes. All right, it's 7 o'clock. I know we have David and Bill now on the call and myself. We can get started now. I think we have about, how many of us on right now? 11 of us. Bill, do you think we should get started?
You want to maybe give it like 2 or 3 minutes just to see if there's any other stragglers that want to get here?
Sure, that works for me. So everyone that's with us will be starting probably about 7:03 or so. But we'll be here.
Bill, are you going to queue up Abbey Road for the background music?
I am. I might add, well, my friends are going to come walking by in a few minutes. They just
Okay.
back and forth.
All right.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah. Only the second side of Abbey Road, though, you know, the big medley. That's what we want to play.
There you go.
It's a good one.
I'm gonna have to jump off. I have to go to the ESC meeting, but about 15 minutes. So
Okay.
All right,
I'll
yeah,
catch the recording on what I missed. But
Okay.
thanks, David, for being here and for doing this, everybody.
No, no worries.
thank you for joining us, Julie.
Couple of minutes, you know.
Yeah, so we can get, I think we just had someone else. If I wouldn't mind all our attendees before I get started, if you wouldn't just mind muting yourself just for the presentation portion. And then when we open up for Q&A, we'll kind of just explain it, you know, what we're looking for if people have questions. But I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. My name's Erin Kokinda. I'm the Community Economic Development Director here in Wakefield. We are joined by David. David, eventually I'm going to pronounce your last name correctly. Lutzenheiser. Is that close enough? He is from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. He's a senior transportation planner with them, and we've been working really closely with him over the last 2 years on this initiative and another initiative that we're working collaboratively with other communities here in our region. And then we're also joined tonight by Bill Renaud from the town of Wakefield. He's our town engineer. So we've been kind of the team here. We did have someone else that was part of the team, but from MAPC, but went somewhere else. So it's really been the core, us three. Just to kick it off, so we want to thank everyone for joining us for the bike ped plan final public meeting. Just to give you kind of a backstory, and I'll hand it over to Bill after, of how we got to where we are now. When I first started in November of 2020, I think David reached out to me and Bill about possibly working together to look at our bike and pedestrian improvements. And I know Bill was working on plenty of this prior to me starting as well. And how do we make our community more bikeable, walkable, look at all different alternative modes of transportation here. So it's the perfect timing. So we met the beginning of early 2021, got the process going. And by the end of the year, we had a survey, I want to say probably the fall, actually, fall of 2021, we had a survey, a bike ped survey go out to the community, kind of gauging how often they biked, walked, rolled, scooted around town, what could be improved throughout the community, kind of give us a basis of where we should be going with this plan. Certain areas of town they'd like to see improvement. From there, we had our first public meeting, which was of December of 2021. So it's been an ongoing process, but we would just want to make sure we get it right. And then in June of 2022, they being MAPC, presented to the Traffic Advisory Committee with a draft plan, getting some recommendations from them on what would work, what wouldn't work, what they would like to see. And then we had our last public meeting, July 14th, 2022, which is hard to believe that was almost a year ago at this point. And I know many of the people in this room were at that meeting and provided a lot of great feedback, which that we then had to revisit our bike ped plan and make quite a few edits and look at formatting, recommendations, policies. And so that brings us to today of June of 2023, hard to believe. And so we want to thank you all for whoever filled out this survey, has been kind of along with us during this journey. I think we're going to be really happy with the finished product, and it really plays in nicely to the master plan and a number of other planning efforts that we have going on in some of these housing developments that we're seeing in our downtown. So that was a lot, but as you can see, it's quite the process, and we're just happy to be here tonight. So with that being said, I'm gonna pass it over to Bill from his office, kind of how we go about implementing this, and also kind of how.
Yep. So a couple items for, obviously it's an important plan for Public Works and for the engineering division, because we're responsible for, infrastructure improvements within our right of ways. And obviously this focuses a lot on the multimodal aspects of that. So, we see this as a roadmap for my group, to identify either developer contributions to have this funded through, through developers for certain improvements, and then also to make sure that we dovetail these improvements into our roads program that we do. So our annual paving program and sidewalk programs and different things that we do, obviously to upkeep the infrastructure in the town. So it's a real important piece for us. And, we heard a lot of feedback, I think, at the last time Aaron touched upon that. So we've tried to address all of those comments. We've also really focused on connectivity between, civic spaces and public spaces that people would want to go in between. So we've focused on that over the last year. That's been a big priority for staff to provide feedback to MAPC. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over to David. He'll go through kind of where we are, some of the changes that we've made since the last public meeting. And then I think after that, Aaron, we're going to open it up to questions and comments. Our plan at this point is to hopefully wrap it up, that this will be the final public meeting, and then we'll have a meeting where we go to the town council for adoption of this plan, and then we start to implement, which is the stuff that I do. So I'm pretty excited for that. So David, take it away, my friend.
All right, thanks, Bill. Thanks, Aaron. Here we go. I am David Lotzenizer with MAPC, as was mentioned, and I've been pleased to have the opportunity to work with the town of Wakefield for the past 2 years on this plan. We do bicycle and pedestrian plans throughout the Boston region, but I really appreciate that Wakefield's been particularly engaged in this process, both staff and certainly the Safe Streets Working Group through this process. So that helps to make not only a better plan, but one that's actually going to be implemented. And we're already seeing that progress happening, as we speak. So my presentation will be relatively short. It will focus mostly on the major projects and also some of the evolving changes that happened since we last met on this platform. And I see that I have the old date from the previous presentation, so it is the current presentation, I hope. So our key goals of the plan, just a reminder, is to encourage walking, cycling, rolling in throughout the town of Wakefield. And so this plan is here to establish an infrastructure plan and policy plan that enables this travel between destinations throughout town. The size of Wakefield is very walkable, very bikeable. You can bike across town in a matter of probably less than 30 minutes in most directions. And certainly the downtown is accessible in 15 or 20 minutes at the most from every corner of the town. Our part of the goal here is to, throughout the list of projects and proposals in this plan, is to institutionalize every time that the town is doing a project, a street road project, we're considering improving conditions and safety for pedestrian, cycling, and rolling accommodations. So those are sort of main overarching goals, and we're on our way. I just do want to throw in a plug for bike parking that we encourage everyone to, or the town to adopt policies that require bicycle parking in development, particularly multifamily development, and also shopping and retail. Short-term and long-term parking. Short-term parking is that which you're stopping at the store to pick up something and you're only there for half an hour. Long-term is either in terms of residential, you're actually living there and you're parking the bike overnight, or it's a place of work, or a place where you're there for a number of hours during the day, such as a workplace. Typically recommend that long-term parking be covered. Short-term and long-term parking meet design standards. The graphic below basically describes, essentially you want 2 points on the bike, be able to lean against 2 points on the rack and be separated by a certain amount of distance, and installed with enough clearance to allow bikes to be parked next to each other. The photo is of a sheltered bike parking location that parks not only your typical road bikes, but your much more common, or even more common now. Well, this is a cargo bike, but also the electric bikes are increasing rapidly in the region, which are slightly bigger. I just want to give you an update on some of the mapping as well as part of this project. On the left is a map of all of the trails in town. Those in green are paved wider trails. Those in the reddish brown color are more of the natural surface hiking trails through the town park system and beyond. Again, it does not show the rail trail because it's not officially open yet, but it will soon. The map on the right shows the sidewalk inventory in town. The light green indicates where the sidewalks are located, and whether it's on one side or two sides. Overall, a goal for arterial streets is to have the sidewalk on both sides of the street, but it's better to have it on one than none. So, but some of the key areas that we recommend sidewalks are obviously the streets that do not have sidewalks. There's sections of North Ave, Forest Street, New Salem Street, and a few other major streets around town that do not have sidewalks, or limited sidewalks. Probably Forest Street's the most difficult to accommodate this because of the narrow right-of-way and the steep grades, but the others are a bit more straightforward. So this slide shows, I'm showing recommended roadway cross sections. These are sort of generic. Again, it's not specific to a specific location. That's done as part of the design process. But on a typical roadway with 50 feet of right-of-way, which includes many of the
Sorry,
are you able to mute that?
please mute yourself.
Folks, if you're not talking, just make sure you please mute it. Thank you.
for the roadway cross sections that are 50 feet, which includes a number of the roadways in the town, we identify 3 different types of cross sections that could be, generalized in these roadway cross sections. On the upper right, we have a roadway with standard bike lanes, 10-foot travel lanes, and sidewalks and trees. On the lower right, we have taking that same cross section and actually widening that site. Instead of bike lanes on the street, it's widening the sidewalk to 12 feet or thereabouts and creating a 2-way path. And that's essentially what is happening on North Ave shortly. And then on the lower left, it's a way of putting protected bike lanes on each side of the street with the additional sidewalks. So depending on the context and other factors, that these are just generic recommendations for that. So a narrower street, you're not able to put in bike lanes necessarily. So this is the general cross section for that. On the right, it says 12 feet, but it's actually 11 feet with a 1-foot shoulder or fog line in that situation. You definitely want to have about 24 feet of pavement width to allow the larger trucks to pass each other. On the left, you have a bike lane in one direction, which we'll show a bit later on Main Street by Lake Quannapowitt. So this is a composite map of all of the projects that are recommended as part of this plan. Those projects that are in a solid line are those that are already funded or under construction. The rail trail, right now is, I guess, I understand intersections are under construction. Those projects in green, North Ave, shared use path. The orange are sidewalk projects, and the blue are bike lanes, and a number of intersection projects, which I'll discuss in a future slide. And the light brown are what we call shared streets. So these are lower volume streets that would be ways to avoid the main streets. In this case, Albion and Main Street are ways to travel on residential streets, pedestrians on the sidewalk, cyclists in the roadway, in an area where there's not really space for potentially a bike lane, or provide a quieter alternative to those streets. So that's sort of an overview of the projects, and happy to answer questions on those later. And I apologize for the formatting here. It looks like, okay, that didn't come out right. So here we go. So this is a list of some of the of all the intersections in the plan that we have recommendations for. Oak and Green Street, which is indicated on the image on the right side. I'm taking a street that has a very wide area of asphalt and little definition of the vehicle travel that reduces that pavement width and channelizes it such that it's safer to cross, safer to travel as a driver. It provides additional open space for public use. And some of the others listed here, addressing sidewalk gaps at North Avenue and Prospect Street. There's a sidewalk, missing sidewalk on the west side of North Ave there. Main Street and Hanson Street, there was a pedestrian fatality at this intersection. So looking at ways to improve the crosswalk conditions there. It is actually a very challenging intersection because the roadways coming into Main Street are offset, and driveways makes it difficult to site the crosswalks, but there is something to be addressed. At Farm Street and Hemlock by the high school and the entrance to the tech school, which is the image on the right, looking at a potential roundabout at that location. And other locations as listed here: Lowell, Salem, Albion, Gould, North and Walcott, looking at some realignments, sidewalks, curb ramps, or curb cuts, and that so forth. I should say North Ave and Walcott had a pedestrian fatality recently, and also looking at improving the signals at that location. Water and Vernon is one of several intersections that's being upgraded as we speak to provide safe crossing of the rail trail. In this slide, we're looking at the greenways. The greenways are what we call our regional corridors that are continuous and provide some level of safety and separation from motor vehicles. And we've identified basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of a spokes of a wheel here. We're looking at Wakefield Center. We have the rail trail in purple running out to the northeast. We have that blue line running to the east that connects to the high school, Metro Tech, and the Breakheart Reservation. We have the Mystic Highland Greenway, which is a regional effort to connect the trail system that starts along the Malden River, and that would connect to both the Wakefield Rail Trail, also the Tri-Community Bikeway in Stoneham, and of course the lake. So that parallels or is on Main Street, and the spur off to the left and to the lower left hooks up with the Tri-Community Bikeway in Stoneham that extends into Winchester. And then, of course, Lake Quannapowitt, circling Lake Quannapowitt. The goal with the Lake Quannapowitt project was to create a 10 or 12 foot path around the lake, provide much wider, safer accommodation for people using the lake. And then also going under I-95, that dashed line into Reading, to improve conditions there under 95 to possibly create another extension of the path system into Reading. So they have better access to the lake and beyond. So as I mentioned, Lake Quannapowitt, the current condition on Main Street on the lower left is, as you well know, it's narrow, not adequate for the travel. So people are walking in the roadway. So our proposal at this, with this plan is that we would have the current 5 foot roughly sidewalk would be widened to about 12 feet. And then a bike lane in the southbound direction, and then the 2 travel lanes. Parking would be removed in this section to accommodate this goal, though there's a possibility of parking at limited events, bigger events, and annual events in the town. The Mystic Highlands Greenway is a mission that connects from Melrose to the lake. This cross section here focuses on Main Street, and this location is at Round Park on the right. And so along Main Street, there's plenty of width to actually do something fairly creative. That is to, continue to allow parking on one side of the street, and on the other side of the street, you would either widen that sidewalk to make it a shared use path like is being done on North Ave, or you could do a simpler installation which has bike lanes. It could be two-way as shown in this image, or it could be a bike lane in each direction with traffic. So again, it's a context sensitive, or through the design process, you would identify what the potential solution would be, or what the preferred solution would be at a given location. So I think that's all my slides. Yes, so that's just a map of the projects again. So I will stop sharing. I can also go back to sharing if you'd like. And I'll turn it over, I think, to Erin to field questions.
So yeah, I will definitely moderate questions. There was a few things that I forgot to mention at the beginning, and I just want to make note of it. I do want to thank the Safe Streets working group. They did provide us some feedback of things that they see. And also, just so folks know, we do have this draft plan, if you didn't have a chance to see it, on the Bike Ped website. So unfortunately, we don't have the chat enabled, so I put the link in there. But if you just go to the Bike Ped plan on our page, you'll be able to find the full document there. And again, that's a draft. And we will be doing a presentation to the town council in July of this year. And with that being said, I just thought that was all really important information. So I just want to make sure I included that. So I wouldn't.
And that draft is text. It's not formatted. It'll look much better.
Yeah. It's really,
so
exactly. And so with that being said, I think we're going to open it up. Thank you, David, very much. It was thorough and short, but very thorough. And I think that's kind of, what we are looking for, because I know we covered a lot more at our last public meeting. So, and we did a lot of work since then. So with that being said, I'm going to ask folks to raise their hand. I'll call on you, and I'll kind of direct the question to either David or Bill. And then I'll ask you to unmute yourself, and just, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself as well, that would be super helpful to this group here. So I think I saw Julie's hand up first. So Julie, if you wouldn't mind lowering your hand and unmuting yourself and just introducing yourself.
Hi, Julie Scott. I'm a member of FOLQ and Wakefield Center Neighborhood Association, and I'm a Lakeside resident. I got a bunch of questions. I'm so concerned when I hear no parking on the lakeside. I have some concerns about the neighborhood I live in and the various streets off of the lake. How will they take the parking from the lake into the neighborhoods? Will there be permit parking required on those streets? I walk the lake almost every day. I have almost my entire life. I don't see the need to remove parking along the lake. I know the state likes this in other parts of the state. I saw a previous meeting where they said that they look at a lake like Wakefield and there's typically no parking allowed. I have such concerns about how that would not work for the community of Wakefield. We are so short on parking. We've got so much development coming into the community. We'll be changing the parking structure downtown where we will be having parallel parking. So taking so many parking spaces, almost a mile's worth away from the lakeside, will not encourage visitors to Wakefield. Again, will there be forums for the neighborhoods to get involved? And will they be told about this? Because I've been waiting. I saw this online about a year ago at a meeting held by one of the community resources that we have here. And I've talked to neighborhoods along the lake and they've heard nothing.
Julie, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to get your initial question answered. So were you unable to attend last year where we talked in great detail about this situation? And I know Bill and David can go into more details about this. Were you at this meeting last year?
I watched it online after, I believe I watched it online after. My dad was very sick at that time. No, I was not able to attend it, but there are neighborhoods after neighborhoods who haven't heard any of this. Will they be brought in before this becomes permanent? Is this something that's really going to happen or is this negotiable?
So Bill and David, I'll let you guys go into more detail about that.
All right, I'll take that. So, I mean, typically Julie, all parking issues, as you know, go to the Traffic Advisory Committee. So
Right.
They would be weighing in and doing that. Any project that's larger that we would implement typically go to the town council for, for their blessing. So there definitely would be opportunities for further discussion. Some of the comments that we heard was to have, not only the shared use path that goes around the lake. So at the last meeting, a big conversation was about making sure that we had essentially just a clockwise motion around the lake as opposed to having bike lanes on both sides and some other things that were initially proposed. So this is sort of the compromise discussion for that. We weren't looking to have permanent, the permanent demarcation between the bike lane and the and the travel lane, so that for big events like Festival of the Lake or any of these things that are coming up, you would be able to use those for large events to get folks down there. A lot of projects in town that are in the queue right now will have additional parking as well. So, those will probably be moved forward prior to this project happening that you're speaking of. So Cabot and Forbes has public parking as part of theirs. They're also doing a secondary parking lot closer to Gertrude Spalding. There's also on Common Street a plan to have an additional parking lot that's created as part of the Envision project. We also have, the additional parking that was added on Common Street. So there's going to, in the Envision project, when that moves forward, we'll have a whole other side of parking. So, really, I look at it more of a shifting of the parking locations as opposed to complete elimination. And then I guess the only other point I would make is that obviously if there's an issue that happens in the neighborhoods, we will address them. We always do. So,
well, I know I've talked to about 15 different people on different streets that abut my Central Street location.
Yep.
And they really want to hear about this. They don't want to get it on the back end. It sounds to me like these people who usually park on the lakeside will be forced to park in the neighborhoods.
yeah,
The neighborhoods are already used to, we just did Pleasant Street over, we just did Cordes Street over. They're going to be great, but that's changing what the neighborhoods have. It's great that I belong to Wakefield Center neighborhood. I'm helping on Saturday with the Festival by the Lake, but that's one day a year.
yeah.
I live on the lake. In the past couple days, I know we've had the smoke issue from Canada. I've
Mhm.
counted the number of bikes that we've had, and it's been very minimal. I don't understand this. I have friends who
Yeah.
are major bikers. There are apps that they have on their phones, and there is not a bike route that comes through Wakefield along the lake. It
Well, we're
goes north.
creating
Well,
it.
that's
though,
what we're
Julie.
doing.
That's what this is doing. So we're creating that destination component to it. And
So-
again, the project, when it moves forward, is not going to be, there's going to be plenty of public outreach for a project that happens on Main Street. Just like the Envision project, we need to plan things out and have long-term vision for these things for us to be able to implement them. So,
And this
you
is
know,
not happening tomorrow. No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
yeah,
off. This is
nothing's
a
happening
plan.
tomorrow.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
will be definitely neighborhood dialogue. And David, I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add, but I think going back to Bill's point, just because people aren't doing it now, we're doing these things to attract more people to do it so they feel like they can do it safely. Maybe that's why some people aren't doing it currently.
Right, and I understand why we're doing it, and they're doing it in Europe too. I was just in Holland a couple weeks ago, and they built all this stuff thinking people would come, and they're not. I live on the lake. I don't see a ton of bikers. I know you're hoping to bring them, but it's going to have a dramatic effect on the neighborhoods and their availability to park. And this is New England. We don't have a lot of biking for 4 months of the year. We're not Florida. So I'm really concerned that we're changing this, and it's already hard for people on Main Street, the lakeside part of Main Street, who live on the north side of Main Street, to have parking in front of their houses. I don't see how that can really be improved when we do the new roadway over. So, and I know we're losing parking. Steve came to a meeting last week that I organized with a bunch of lakeside
Julie-
groups. And I asked him about this issue, and he acted like he needed to check about it. I know it's been awfully quiet. I'm asking for more publicity about it, because I know I'm not the only one concerned.
And so when that project moves forward, we'll definitely do that.
Yeah, we'll definitely. So Julie, I know you had a few other things, but we do have other folks' hands up. So if you want to hold on to those questions and let us have.
No, I'm good. I
Okay.
really want you to outreach to the neighborhood, and
When,
I
that-
would
yeah,
like
when that
to
happens, we
also
definitely will.
outreach to before it happens, to FOLQ and to Wakefield Center neighborhood.
That's what I mean.
We've been meeting with the Hartshorn House. We've been meeting with the Corner Power Yacht Club. Steve came to one of the meetings last week.
Okay.
I just want to emphasize that, in the photo that I showed, that people are walking in the street where the people are sometimes parking, and
I know that.
that
I
is
live
not
there.
wide
I
enough.
do that
Yeah.
myself.
So in order to do that, the only way to do that is to either make it a one-way street or remove parking.
I
And so
question an entity that doesn't live in Wakefield suggesting that this is the solution
So
for
this-
Wakefield.
We
This has been a
do,
group effort. This has been
Well, I
definitely a
don't-
group effort, Julie, and survey based and everything like that from folks.
Right,
in
I
town.
took the survey, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'm going to, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Julie and David. I didn't know if you had anything else to
No,
add.
I'm
but-
good. No,
All right,
just
John-
looking forward to outreach. Thank you.
Great.
thank
Thank you,
you.
Julie. Appreciate it.
Thank you. John, I think your hand was up next. John Chrisley?
Yeah, just figuring out the
Oh,
my hand down here. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Bill, and thanks, David. I'm the co-chair of Safe Streets Working Group, and I just want to express my appreciation for all the work that's gone into the plan. I know it's involved a lot of different people, getting a lot of different inputs and information together. So it's actually a very important meeting tonight, and I want to kind of celebrate that and the milestone that we've made up until this date. I think, I want to emphasize, I think the strengths of the plan are, calling for the complete and continuous network on local roads. I think that's a real strength of the plan. And I think several of the major road segments, like the North Ave project, I just did want to check with David. That plan calls for the much wider two-way sidewalk and the northbound bike lane. I didn't hear the bike lane mentioned on that north.
It does, and that project's already bid at this point, John. So
Right.
we're looking to start that in July. So
Right. Yeah, I know. I already saw the utility poles that got moved, Bill.
Yep.
So, I guess I want to give kudos to developing, a true network around town. I did want to ask a couple questions about, I saw David, he put up the cross section for the section of Main Street from North Ave, I believe, down to Forest Street. I just wanted to clarify, is that the recommended cross section for that part of Main Street?
Fourth Street is down by Greenwood.
Yeah, it's the one where the train parking is.
Right.
So in
Yeah, I
the
put-
plan, there's three options that we'll be evaluating. So one's just a bike lane, one's a wider sidewalk, kind of shared use path component. I don't know if we can make it all the way down, John. So I think what we would be
Right.
looking at is widening out that sidewalk and shared use path at JJ Round. And then that other long stretch would be a bike lane.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, or maybe a shared use path. I'm not sure yet. I like all
Yeah,
these things that, we're identifying areas.
Right.
Some, whether it's two-way or one-way, I think that's kind of what the
Right.
focus is.
Right.
And then obviously, when I get into designing these projects, we have to look at the specifics and the dimensions.
Right.
We can't go through every single street in town and look at dimensions. So that we
Right.
kind of highlight the locations for me to
Right.
make sure that I'm plugging in and including, an improvement in, basically.
Well, what I'm doing, I'm supporting that cross section that David just talked about, up by JJ Round Park. I want to be, totally clear about that.
Yeah.
I am concerned about, what we do on Main Street from Forest Street down to the Melrose town line. I think, I live in the Greenwood district. And Julie, I am a cyclist. I ride Main Street all the time. And I know how dangerous it is. I've been out, I'm going out tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. to avoid the main rush hour. But when I consider a couple times when I've gone on that section of Main Street to connect to downtown, I mean, it's heavily traveled. It's probably one of the most important, and I'd say dangerous corridors in town. So like I said, I support that cross section that David just put up there. But I think the plan needs to do some additional thinking about that section from Forest Street and connecting through the Greenwood district right to the Melrose town line.
Actually, John, I did not mention it in the presentation, but we do have a potential proposal that involves working with the T, which could be a challenge, but it involves going down Atwood Avenue, which is a dead-end street that connects to Greenwood Station, and then continuing on T right-of-way west of the tracks to Greenwood Street on a shared use path adjacent to the tracks.
Yeah.
So that would essentially avoid Main Street at Greenwood, which is very tight, as you know, with parking and travel.
Well,
And
certainly
then-
that would be a welcome addition, but as you probably know, David, as a cyclist, that would just be ignoring Main Street. And if you're going to
Yeah,
ride on
but-
Main Street and get to those stores,
Right.
the only
Right.
choice you have.
But Main Street is at Greenwood is very limited in space. There is just no room with the parking and the travel lanes to do much more. So this is a way to get you away from that. And people that are comfortable in traffic can take Main Street, but this provides an option to avoid Main Street for those that choose so. And then south of there, it's on neighborhood low traffic streets into Melrose.
Well, I propose we could do a lot with speed reduction on that section of Main Street from the Greenwood Business District, even bringing it down I'd say at a minimum down to 25 miles per hour, because
those
people
are
speed all the
different.
time.
Yeah, those are different things though, John. So that would be traffic advisory committee that handles the speed pieces. We're focusing on where we want to add, bicycle and ped accommodations with this plan.
Sure.
Speed related items are different. So we would handle that at the traffic advisory committee. And, there are requirements on how you can change speed limits. We don't get to just put a sign up and change it. It doesn't work that way.
Sure.
So if we do a special speed regulation, it goes through and needs to get approved by Mass DOT. So the council doesn't even have the ability to make that decision. They're allowed to implement school zones locally and change those speeds. And unless the town adopts other speed laws that have been created, and that hasn't moved forward at this point, we have to look at them individually. And, there's requirements on how to do that. And a lot of it requires the changes in geometry to make that happen. It's not just put up a sign, unfortunately, but we can always take that offline and have another dialogue on that and bring it to the TAC. If there's areas you want to look at, it's something we definitely, we definitely understand. And we're looking in other areas around town. That's Oak Street's been brought up a bunch. That we've done some studies there, looking at speed and some issues there. So we know that there are areas around town. There's basically just, I'd look at it as like different tools in the toolbox than the bike lanes and the pet improvements. So.
No, I hear what you're saying. There's a different tools and different approaches. I guess I'd like to see the bike plan just describe some of that, and emphasize the current dangerous conditions there. David did mention in his presentation there was a fatality right at Hanson Street by the post office. I can look out my dining room window and see that intersection practically. So, that's I just like to see some more emphasis on the plan on that. But I'll leave it at that, and we can certainly take it offline. And I appreciate you addressing that, Bill.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thank you so much. I think I saw Jessica's, and I apologize. I'm doing it just the best of the order I can see right now. But Jessica, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. Hello. Oh, I can see I successfully unmuted. Hi, I'm Jessica, Wakefield resident, particularly in Greenwood. And I just wanted to say thank you for opening everything up to public comment. It's great to see that Wakefield is trying to emphasize their pedestrian and cycling plan. I live right on Main Street and I see cyclists 12 months out of the year, varying ages. And I think it's great to have safe infrastructure for all of them. And I saw a variety of recommended solutions, and I was wondering, when would different solutions get selected for different locations, and what kind of feedback would we be able to give when that's decided?
Yeah. So we do. Have you had a chance, Jessica, to look at our the draft plan yet?
Some of it, not all
Some
of
of it, yeah. So we do, and I'll let David and talk about this a little more. We do have a priority type map that highlights the different projects of, what's high importance, what's mid, what's kind of low. So he did a great job, or we did a great job. Well, I'm not tooting our own horn, but prioritizing, where we should be starting, what projects should be at the forefront. But David, I don't know if you wanted to take that and kind of run with that, and then Bill, if you wanted to talk from the town's perspective of
Over half the projects are high priority because we're prioritizing projects that are near schools, in particular near parks, near the downtown. So they're all of good priority, but I think Bill can better address the order.
Yeah, I can speak to the Main Street in Greenwood. So a couple of items there. So our gas company right now needs to make upgrades in that area. So, until that happens, we're not going to be moving forward. We'll be doing patching and different small things. But when we go to repave that area, I would expect that to be a dialogue, again, at the council level. That's typically what we do when we're making major changes to our cross sections. There's usually some regulatory signing that's required too. So we, kind of roll all that in to go to the council. So, I would anticipate that as a dialogue probably in a couple of years or so, maybe 3. Is when we'd be looking at that so that they have their time to get their gas stuff in. I know the road's getting pretty hairy out there, but we'll be doing some patching and stuff in the meantime. But probably in the next 2 to 3, we'd be talking about that area. Okay.
I'm sorry, Jessica, did you also ask how people would be able to comment as well when these projects kind of come online? Did you have that as part of your question as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I probably didn't do a good job answering that then. So basically what we would do is we would have a meeting at the town council, and we typically open it up for a public discussion first. So similar to what we did on Albion Street and on North Ave. So we have a first meeting to kick it off, talk about options, get some feedback, and then we come back for the council to essentially after they've heard all the comments and, our opinions, and they make a decision on what they think is correct, and we go forward with that plan. So there's definitely opportunities, and, we let you know before we get out there, and obviously for something like that, it's a larger design. So we're going to reach out to folks and have some type of forum, with the council. So you'll have an opportunity then.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think it's Paul's hand. If you want to mute yourself, Paul.
Thank you. Very little in this presentation appeared to me to be anything about signaling priority for pedestrians, or indeed improvements for pedestrians at intersections where pathway meets road. I'm wondering exactly how one plans to go about these things.
So you're concerned just about intersections and signaling? Is that where you're?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
Mostly
Yeah.
around the sort of things that regarding signal priority for pedestrians, because as it stands right now, we wait for significant portions of the light cycle, whereas, to return to what Julie said, back in the Netherlands, with a very specific kind of light signaling system, you will end up with a much better way to cycle through the lights and get people going through the intersections where cars are not going at one point.
Yeah, so we would do that at each intersection reconstruction. So we have some plans that we're looking at to do a few around town. The Envision project specifically has 5 signals. So basically that whole Main Street corridor and some of the Water Street corridor, all of those signals would be kind of redone as part of that project. And the signal and pedestrian phases would be improved as part of that. We'd also look at accessible pedestrian signals, so there'd be kind of a vibrotactile button thing, as well as an audible sound to let you know to cross. So we have options in those situations, and then we're also looking kind of on a case by case with different projects we do. We look to add in the rapid flashing beacons. So we're doing that as part of the North Ave project. So there'll be 3 crossings that have those on North Ave. We're improving all of the sidewalks on the, that would be the western side of the roadway. So we have a few, things that we're doing, and, it would continue basically on every project that we do involving signals. But again, that would be something that would be presented, and you'd have a meeting on them. So you'll have opportunities to weigh in. I'm looking to clump a bunch of other signals besides just the Envision ones into a project to get state funding as well. So I'm in the early stages of that development, but that will be a project that you'll hear about probably in the next couple of years.
I'm a little disappointed, considering how kind of crucial it is, especially given what has happened, considering the pedestrian fatality. There is a significant necessity for safety if we are going to increase pedestrian throughput, if we are going to increase cyclist throughput. Which brings me to my other item, traffic calming. How does the same item apply to that?
Nope. No, so that goes to the Traffic Advisory Committee.
Mhm.
And we have a traffic calming policy that's there. I am the vice chair of that committee. So I'm on that. If you have ideas, projects, there's a whole form you can fill out to talk about different areas that you want us to look at. We do it based on data collection first, determine the problems, and then look at implementing different traffic calming when it's appropriate. So there's a process for it. If you have areas specifically you want to look at.
And I can follow up with this email too, with this information as well. That would be helpful. But I think, and David, maybe you can speak to this too, with the narrowing of the roads and things like that, that kind of is a traffic calming tool already. Is that correct?
I was going to speak to the signaling. It's almost a balance of, do you, a shorter wait for the signal, which means you're walking concurrently with traffic, versus a separate cycle for pedestrians and cyclists, which provides more safety, but you wait a much longer time in that signal cycle. I think, again, it's an intersection decision whether to do one or the other. But I always encourage, that extra, when it runs concurrent, pedestrian cycle comes up 3 or 5 seconds ahead of the green light for motor vehicles, so pedestrians can be in the crosswalk and visible before drivers have the green.
Yeah, visibility will always be an issue. I will give you that. Let's see. And another part of this that I think, and you've probably considered this already, is that this is a multi-part installation, in the sense that we need to reevaluate quite a bit of the physical space and then change it in order to make this network the greatest that, well, in order to create the sort of traffic that we need to create that demand. And at least from my perspective, I don't feel like enough of it has been done at this point. My apologies.
Well, that's
Especially-
why this plan is being
That's why we're
created,
doing the
to start the
plan.
process.
Yeah, I mean, we recognize it, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, there hasn't been a ton of improvements, and I think you could go to look at the investment in our roadway, sidewalk, and signal infrastructure going back decades. The investment just hasn't been there. So a lot of those deference projects are coming due, and we're working towards them right now. I mean, unfortunately, all these things do take time, and we need a place to start, to have a plan to start working and picking off projects. I mean, that's what this plan's doing for us. So.
And as a concluding remark, at least for me, I would like to remind us all that no matter where the built environment, the urban built environment at least, went, the bike probably came first. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. I think I have M. Nelting. I feel like I should know you because I've seen you on meetings, so I apologize. Oh, you're muted. There we go.
Okay, yeah, it's Maureen. I just use M.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and you have probably seen me before. I
Yes.
am a member of the Safe Street.
Yes, that's right.
Streets
Okay.
Working
Thanks so
group.
much for joining us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to talk about a couple of items. I looked at the crosswalks between the intersection of North and Main down to the Linfield line, just to see all the intersections. I mean, not just, whether they had traffic lights, rapid flashing beacons, et cetera. And there were a couple I wanted to talk about. I'm not going in any particular order. There were 5 I was going to, but I disregarded the, or basically quote unquote, throughout Main at Hanson, because that clearly is going to be worked on at some point. There's some issues there. So there's no sense even talking about that. I was curious I'm starting now at North and Main, and there is a crosswalk with a rapid flashing beacon at Railroad Avenue. And then there is another 1/10 of a mile from the traffic light at North and Main, or I should say Main at North. And then another about 1/10 plus a little bit, there's a crosswalk at Charles Street, which is an MBTA bus stop. There is no rapid flashing beacon there. I'm just kind of curious, they're so close together. Why are there 2 crosswalks within like 1/10 of a mile of each other?
I'd have to look into that as to why they were installed. I mean, a lot of these things were just sort of willy-nilly done back in the day, and that'd probably be my answer. I mean, I can tell you on North Ave, we looked at, certain crossings and moved, lights, and looked at, spacing them out appropriately. So that type of thing. So as we're going into these streets, each of the streets, we'd be looking at those types of things. I mean, we're looking at implementing one on Broadway based on some neighborhood feedback that we received. So it depends on, I'm not a fan of putting them everywhere. I mean, at some point they just become noise if you have them everywhere. So they need to have more of a policy and a reason. I think, bus stops would be a good reason for it to be there. Parks would be a good reason. I think one of them's at the dog park, if I recall, right? So,
Crosswalk, Bill?
The crosswalk and the beacons, both. So, you're
Okay.
talking about beacons as well, right? Because it's 2 sets of beacons you're
I
saying?
looked at every crosswalk. I didn't see, I must have missed the dog park because there was,
Yeah, I
maybe
think
that's the
where one
Railroad
is.
Avenue one.
Yeah, there's one set that's right by Railroad Ave.
That must be
that's
it.
there because of the dog park. So,
That must be it. Okay.
yeah, so we're typically looking at when there's some type of pedestrian generator there and there's a reason to be focusing to get across there. That's where we're trying to have them installed for the most part.
Okay.
So,
I'm
But
not
that
saying
helps.
it's a negative that it's there. It just seemed odd that there was that one, 1/10 of a mile from the intersection at North, and then another 1/10 of a mile at the bus stop. It just
Yeah.
seemed odd. I was wondering why there's only one, but that's.
yeah, and the
two.
bus stop was because the ET paid for it. So that would have
Gotcha.
been the reason for that. Yeah.
Another one going down Main Street is the JJ Round.
Mhm.
Two things on that. Number one, I do think there should be a rapid flashing beacon there, because when the kids are in there, anyone, I mean, the JJ Round Park might not get a lot of activity in the, in the winter, but in the summer, I know there is, and the fall and the spring, there is a lot of activity there.
Yep.
The other thing is, my understanding, and I have seen it myself, but I know others have also, the crosswalk, the crosswalk. People park over that crosswalk, which is very dangerous if anyone wants to cross the street.
Mhm.
A suggestion, and I don't know the technical term, but on either side of the crosswalk, maybe do some sort of triangle that goes
Like a
into the
bump out.
crosswalk with some,
Yeah.
additional striping, sort of like as an added sort of buffer, reminder that you're not supposed to park there.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And in general, all the crosswalks need to have curb ramps too. So that's, some of these were just installed and painted at times, and they've just kind of been legacy installs. Again, as we go to pave, I look at all of them, and if it doesn't make sense, they're not there anymore. So that usually becomes a very, very bad, that's a bad decision in some folks' eyes. I've definitely heard some feedback on that is not positive, but obviously we're trying to make sure that folks are crossing in the right spots, and there's nothing wrong with kind of huddling folks to one location across that's safer. So that's what we're trying to do as we move forward.
And another one, which clearly I shouldn't even mention, because I'm sure you're aware of everyone I'm talking about, is at the Greenwood School definitely needs a rapid flashing beacon of some.
Yeah. So as a matter of fact, there was a 40B that was approved there.
Okay.
And I had the developer, once they start their construction, they're looking at, I think, starting soon. But I had the crosswalk, there'll be an imprint crosswalk that's being put there, new curb ramps and flashing beacons, all on the developer's dime. So
Okay.
that's
Well,
coming.
that's even better if we're not paying for it.
Yeah,
And then I was just curious, there's a crosswalk at Billy's Roast Beef. Now the address, because I wasn't sure, because I know I could tell from the signage on the other side of the street that some of it must be Melrose. Is that crosswalk Melrose's crosswalk or our crosswalk?
I'd have to look specifically at it. I mean, the town line's right over there, so I'd have to.
Yeah, it's just odd, because I would recommend a flashing beacon, but I'm not sure if it's ours or theirs. Another crosswalk, which I believe is more related to an Envision 2030, at least for funding purposes, it's not the same area I'm talking about, is on Main Street at Richardson, where farmland is. There's angle parking clearly on both sides of the street. On the,
Farmland? At Farmland on Main Street? No, there's bus stops right there.
no, there's a crosswalk. Lincoln Street is on one side, Richardson
Yep.
Avenue is on the other side.
Oh, yeah. Further up. Yep, I got you. Yep.
Yeah, and that's a tough, they all are, but that one's particularly because of where the angle parking is.
Mhm.
In my opinion, walking, because I do walk across the street, I walk around town anyway, but it's worse from Lincoln Street to Richardson Avenue to cross, because the angled parking line on the Lincoln Street area is very close. It basically, it butts up right to the crosswalk. There's a
Right.
little bit of room more on what I'll call the bread shop farmland side. It's not, the angle parking is not butting up right to the crosswalk. So you view at least the street to see if there's cars coming is a
Yeah.
little bit better. That I
So
know is
that's-
not something that's going to be funded anytime soon.
Maureen, I don't mean to cut you off, and I think all the points you're making are very, very valid, and I think Bill can speak to all this stuff all day.
Okay.
do you mind having this conversation about different crosswalks that you would like just have questions for improvements moving forward? I think for the sake of this plan, it was just looking at different crosswalks. What's the best way to do a crosswalk in town when we're looking at intersections and things like that? But I know I can speak for Bill. Bill, I know you would be more than happy to talk to Maureen about different
course.
crosswalks.
Okay, yeah, it's no problem. I have no problem doing that, Aaron. I
Yeah.
do have one area, though, that there is no crosswalk that I'm a little, I am concerned about, because it concerned me personally once when I was walking. It's at the end of, it's on the JJ Round side, Main Street. One time, I've only lived here about 6 years, so not that that matters. I was walking past JJ Rounds and I said, oh, this will be nice. I'll walk all the way down Main Street. Well, I got to Green Street and I'm like, oh, wait a second, there's no sidewalk beyond that.
Mhm.
So I ended up crossing, because I didn't want to go up Green Street. That wasn't my intent.
Yep.
I went to cross from also at the sidewalk side
Mhm.
over to the other side of Main Street. That's a wide area to cross.
It is, yep.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that a crosswalk should be there, but if you had to cross, I mean, I really had to wait a while because people go pretty fast down that road. Is there any chance of having a crosswalk? Is it worth having a crosswalk?
Yeah, and so we're looking at that next year. So that would all be worked out in next year's program, roads program. So we're installing some water main for the tower project that's ongoing. And then we're going to look at realigning that intersection. It's a long kind of angled, area. So I think we're going to look to make some improvements within that spot. So I would dovetail the crosswalk there too.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because that's scary to cross there. Okay,
Okay.
that's all I had. I just wanted to talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Walker, I think you are up next.
All right, thank you. I'm Walker Robbins. I'm actually a neighbor. I live in North Melrose, kind of related to something that came up in the last comments. I'm actually so North Melrose, I'm north of Billy's roast beef. So
There's our
Wakefield
answer.
is a big part of my life. The Greenwood area is a big part of my life. And I just kind of wanted to follow up on some of the points that John was raising about the bike lanes stopping north of the Greenwood district, and then kind of bicycle traffic being funneled through the Greenway, kind of into the Melrose Highlands. You mentioned that it's a tight area, and that seemed to be the reason why there isn't a continuation of bike lanes all the way down to the Melrose line. That's something a lot of us in North Melrose would really like to see. I imagine that's something that a lot of people in South Wakefield would like to see. Easy access to Whole Foods, for example. Is the tightness something that makes it impossible to do, or is it just complicated to do? I'm curious about that.
Nothing's impossible.
Right.
You spend enough money. So, but I would say, really what it comes down to is the business areas in the business district and the parking there. So the tightness comes from having parking on both sides. And, some of those spaces are the only areas for some businesses to park. So there isn't another location or like downtown, we have other little parking areas that we can funnel folks to. We don't have that there. So that's really the challenge. Again, next couple of years, we'll be looking at that corridor once our gas company gets finished with their work. And, we'll really be putting some eyes on it and looking for some feedback on how to do it and what folks want to see. But I find it to be very difficult we can't eliminate both sides of parking. It's just not a deal I think that the town would be receptive to, but potentially one side or sections of it. I mean, there may be a way to slalom through it that would help with slowing folks down that they were talking about earlier that John had mentioned. So there are ways, it's just how receptive the businesses will be to that. And, obviously they're, part of our community. So it's kind of difficult to we can't ignore their thoughts. I mean, they're important. And, especially Aaron as our economic development coordinator, right? I mean, that's an
I think
important piece
that's
for
something
us.
we have
So
to be mindful.
I wouldn't say impossible, but very challenging is probably how I'd put it.
Right. Well, I'll just add as a nearby neighbor, I patronize those businesses and would do so more if it was easier to get to them walking or biking or safer to get to them. And I think there are a lot of people in the northeastern part of Melrose in particular that feel the same way. I'm excited about the Greenway path. I think that will do a good job of connecting the Melrose Highlands to Wakefield and Wakefield to the Melrose Highlands.
Sure.
A big chunk of Melrose is cut off from that though by cliffs and hills of discouraging size, I guess you could call it. So I just
Okay.
want to put that in your ear. You've got a lot of people on the other side of the border that would be very interested in seeing what is an awesome, awesome, awesome plan come all the way to the border. We've worked really hard over the last few years to get our bike lanes installed on Main Street, connecting Oak Grove all the way through Melrose up to the Wakefield line. And I'd love to see that paint go a little bit further.
Understood. Understood. Yeah, I mean, feel free to provide us a comment letter. I mean, are you part of the group, the biking group in Melrose?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I would send a letter in so we have at least have that on record, and we'll be looking at that area, like I said, in a couple of years. And if there's something we can do, obviously, if there's something easy to do, it would be done for sure.
I think we'd be doing it right now. Yeah.
We would have already probably done it, to be honest with you. I think there's more room in Melrose in that right away, and that's why they were able to do it. I mean, I know there was a little bit of there was some parking that was taken in certain areas, though, if I recall, right? But those are residential parking spaces, and it's a little different. So, when the businesses don't have another way to get a patron, to come visit them with a car. So,
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Walker. Appreciate
Thank you so much, Walker. Kathy?
Hi, my name is Kathy Tui. I am a Wakefield resident. I'm also a member of Safe Streets and a liaison to the Safe Routes to School program. So I think that the plan as it's laid out right now does have some great improvements, certainly on the biking end, but I'd like to reiterate that there's really a lot lacking from the pedestrian side. Other people have already brought up a lot of examples, but I'd love to see a couple things, which is standardizing safe crosswalks around all of our parks. The crosswalks, the paint, the signage, some areas like on Water Street at the playground there. I think it's Nacella Playground, and there are the baseball fields there. That crosswalk was improved, but almost a year later, it's still lacking signage. There's another crosswalk up Water Street that is lacking signage that I see a senior citizen man bringing his granddaughter to the bus stop every day, trying to cross at a point where the visibility is poor, and without signs, drivers can't really see that crosswalk. There are a lot of areas around our schools where Safe Routes has done some of their assessments, but I've brought to the town's attention lots of other side roads that lead to our schools that Safe Routes hasn't really evaluated that could really benefit from sidewalks, from signage. There's a lot from the pedestrian side that really I think could be looked at. I know that Envision is going to happen many years from now. A lot of it seems like a lot of the town's focus is Main Street and the lake. And there are so many other areas in town that need to be addressed. As we put in more of these gigantic apartment buildings, they're getting okays from the Board of Appeals to not put in as many parking spaces because they're trying to encourage people not to drive. But if you want more people to walk or ride bikes, the town needs to be a lot safer for pedestrians and bicycles. And again, especially from the pedestrian side, I just think there's a lot left to improve.
So, yeah, no, I totally agree. I think we've talked about this before, but I mean, the town did allocate $1.1 million in funding to do kind of infill sidewalks. So that project is in design right now. So those are moving forward on a bunch of streets around different schools and different areas that were discussed previously. So, and that they are included within the plan. So there's a bunch of sidewalk infills that were included. Around Nacella, the development that was approved right next to it, that they're actually improving that crosswalk with a rapid flashing beacon. So that will happen within the next year or so. And then, the Water Street stuff, I don't think that's on my radar, so I can definitely take a look in that area for sure. But, feel free to reach out to me. I can give you more information on some of the other sidewalk projects that we're doing. We're looking at Lowell, and doing that infill sidewalk. That will start and is being bid right now. We have, the one on, Nahant as an infill sidewalk to get those neighborhoods down to the elementary as well as to the high school. We're looking at areas on Farm Street for an expansion. There's other areas that we're doing on Montrose. So there's a whole slew of them around town, and they aren't necessarily just in the downtown and in Lake area, where those are pretty much, most of those are all in other locations.
Yeah, and we do highlight those, right, Bill and David, in with that priority kind of table that we have as well. There's a number of the things that Bill just talked about. But I think too, this plan is, like I mentioned prior, is the town's always evolving and some of this stuff is going to evolve. But I think giving us kind of this basis of what we need to be looking at moving forward when it comes to crosswalks, and pedestrian friendly crossings and things like that. I think it's a guide, but thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate that, your feedback and comment. John, I'm going to come back to you just because you've had a chance to talk. I know, Wayne, if you wanted to unmute.
I think I'm all set. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I live on Parker Road near the Walton School. We see a few bikes going to and from school daily. I'm retired. Live across the street from Davidson Road, a great part of town.
Yep.
I do see a few bikes pretty much on the sidewalk coming, going to school, and that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Parker Road is a very fast road. I do notice a lot of vehicles in town driving very, very, very fast. I think an area that I'm not sure how it could be handled would be going around the 129 Rotary. I used to work in North Reading, and there's a bike lane in Reading on both sides of the road. As you come down from Havel Street to the Rotary, the bike lane ends.
Yep.
And any person trying to get around that Rotary, and it's like Indianapolis. I mean, it's a racetrack. I don't know how that could possibly be handled between towns, but I do apply to reference. How is this all being paid for? I'm coming in a little late on this how's this being paid for?
All the plan, the stuff that's in the plan, you're saying?
Yes.
Or Parker Road specifically, or which one?
No, the plan.
The plan is, so there's a bunch of different ways that we pay for it. So we go after a ton of grants. So we've been pretty successful on the grant side for, I want to say close to, between all the different projects that we have, I'm probably sitting somewhere around $5 or $6 million worth of grants that we've received for different things. So that's funded through there. The state TIP, so that they call that the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program, is funding part of our Envision project and the Rail to Trail. The stuff that's going on for the Rail to Trail right now, that's funded through a Mass Trails grant. The rest of Envision is on the fiscal 28 TIP program. So that's the federal TIP, Transportation Improvement Program. So that's being paid for there. Some of these things are really going to get dovetailed within our roads program as we're doing different projects. So we already have to reset curve. We already have to do some of these things. So we're making those investments as we do the roads. Development, and these developers that come through, they have to pay a good chunk of money to the town for a lot of different things. So we have a standing comment for any development that comes in over 10 units that has to pay essentially to a town-wide impact account that we throw it into and look to fund projects out of that. So that helps us with either either a area specifically or whatever it may be. That's helping with some of the trail crossings that are going in right now too. We also go after there's also larger mitigation payments. So like Cabot and Forbes, for example, they gave us $1.3 million for drainage improvements, but then also which will help us move curbs. And then also they provided us $600,000 for townwide improvements. So we're active in trying to get funding. I think that's probably the takeaway here.
I
And, you know,
appreciate
every-
that. Just a quick aside on my part, being a taxpayer in town, I sit on the building committee.
Yep.
And if we built a new high school, which we probably will, it's gonna cost me and all the other taxpayers on the screen tonight and all the other taxpayers in town, probably an additional $1,000 a year
Mhm.
taxpayer.
Mhm.
So we're trying to get a good bang for our buck. I hope that we can do something as far as increasing the number of bike lanes and
Yep.
people riding on bikes. But I just see that there's so many cars that drive so fast in town that
Yeah.
I sat in front of the bank the other day in an angled park in front of the savings bank. And if there was parallel parking and a travel lane, no, if there's parallel parking, a bike lane and a travel lane, it looks like a real challenge. And the rail crossings, and I certainly appreciate your efforts.
Mm.
But it looks like there's a lot of challenges in town with all the railroad crossings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Wayne. We appreciate it. I guess something to note too that we didn't really highlight is that you were talking about Mass DOT, or not Mass DOT, like the bike lanes, North Reading area. We have ongoing conversations with a lot of the communities around here, and I'm currently having a conversation with Reading DOT for the other side, crossing between Reading and Wakefield. So on top of these grants, we try to do a great job of making sure we're looking at this, as David was saying, regionally. It's not just a town thing. We're trying to connect people, and we just have a gentleman on from Melrose. So it's a conversation between, you know, state, local, the federal government to get these grant opportunities and working together. So
Thanks.
thank you. John, I think you're the last one.
All right. If you can just hook me up with Walker, I just want to buy him a coffee down at Chivo Cafe. Get together for a ride, Aaron.
There you go.
So that's my first request. My second request is for you and Bill. I had emailed David earlier this week about the opening of the rail trail. Do you have any further information on when that might happen, just so that?
Yeah, I was saying mid-July. So really what I'm waiting on right now is the agreement from Mass DOT. So I'm sorry, from MBTA. So the town doesn't have the agreement yet. We got the construction agreement to allow the work to happen. But technically it's not open for public use until we have that agreement finalized with MBTA. So
Okay.
town voted a town meeting before, I want to say maybe 4 years ago, to enter into that agreement. You know, that was something even that was starting prior to me being here. I've taken that on over the last, say, year and a half or so. It's like pulling teeth, but to say the least. But we're in the home stretch, I believe, on this at this point. So I'm hoping for July 15th.
Okay.
But that's what I'm targeting right now.
Right.
Work should be done hopefully before the end of June. I
Okay.
need that for my grant approvals and to get the reimbursement. So.
All right. Thank you. And I just wanted to put out there that if there's like a ribbon cutting event or any other type of public event, that, you know, Safe Streets would be happy to show up and help support that effort.
Awesome.
Thank you.
We will.
Is there anyone else that has any kind of parting words? And I'll just give a quick overview again on next steps and last chance.
I've talked a lot. You can,
Yeah.
you can take.
You need to, yeah, you need to stop. No, I'm kidding. So I want to thank you, Bill and David, very much for their time. David, for all the hard work you put into this plan and bearing with us. I know, you know, we've had some challenges along the way to get this product to where it is today. But I think for the most part, a number of the recommendations, concerns that were brought up tonight, you know, were either addressed in this plan or things that can be addressed in the future as we kind of look at it project by project basis as well. But I do recommend everyone to go take a look at the draft plan. Going back to what David said, it is very much a draft. Well, the content in it is in a draft, but how it's formatted and how it looks is very much a draft. And so this is our last public meeting that we're going to have for this. Bill and myself, and possibly David will be going to the town council for adoption. And again, we'll be using this as a plan to guide us forward. Again, things evolve, things change in town and what that looks like. But it's a good tool for us in our toolbox as we move forward with a variety of great plans that we've kind of put together over the last few years. So I want to thank you. I will follow up. I think a number of things I did here today would be actually for the Traffic Advisory Committee, and Bill, mistake me if I'm wrong. Please feel free to check out their website. And if you have any concerns with traffic calming measures and things like that, reach out to them. They're the group that you'd want to go to. So Bill, David, I don't know if you guys have any parting
Yeah,
words.
just one parting word, that this is a snapshot in time, and the plan, this isn't the only plan we're going to do. Things do change in town, like Aaron mentioned. So we will be revisiting this for sure, in the years to come. This is our first step at it. And then, obviously we'll continue to tighten up this process and address all of the concerns I think that I heard tonight. I mean, we have a lot of it, I think, already in the queue to some degree. So hopefully we can cover what everybody's looking for. So.
And David, do you have anything?
Thank you all for your good comments and input.
Yeah. And I'll follow up with an email again, like I said, with our contact information as well, if you don't have it already. And thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a good night.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks, folks.
you.